It is also probatively evidence beyond all reasonable doubt to myself, by clear inferences from unhelpful witness observation of oral testimony, evidence from the public demonstration of the trees large state action of the Wu-Tang Manifest phenomena coerced upon myself, and specifically, to be centrally corroborating with innocent witness through my wife at its issues, and these are facts, the following, that have been repeated subject matter of the public demonstration of the trees large state action of the Wu-Tang Manifest phenomena is oral testimony out of my life experiences, that Dave Grohl's involvement with the Avon Lake faction group in the previous approximately a decade ago joined acts of a particular plot joined in the whole conspiracy, which continues further motives, very possibly had been most immediately through his operating through doppelgangers Mark Thayer's older brother, who did roommate with a Fritz Beinhoff in the late 80s, and also the alleged son who is really feigning to be the son living next door to my residence in the subdivision West Plains of an Italian-American Mr. Sinceri, who is paying me undue attention for a period of time. I am certain and aware, and by the means aforesaid, that David Grohl, however, has been directly involved with the whole group personally. Also, I have experienced that he has, during this period of time that the Italian-American alleged son, feigning to be the son of Italian-American Mr. Sinceri next door, began residing and paying undue attention to me. Dave Grohl himself was nosediving Cessnas over my house while, during this period of time, these acts were to disturb my sleep while I was in sickbed, being maliciously prescribed with medical malpractice, maliciously in conspiracy, harmful doses of harmful medication, and was often in sickbed, after malicious UCMJ and threatening acts of the Department of Defense upon myself, by which they forfeited their contract, and Dave Grohl was also involved in this organization, also by the connectivities aforementioned in this information, by the treason, along with Trent Reznor, as has been communicated in previous information in this affidavit, and at every base that I've been stationed at, in satanic conspiracy, truly, against this Judeo-Christian. And on that basis, specifically, when also Fritz Beinhoff, that the older brother of Mark Thayer of the Avon Lake Wu-Tang faction group, did roommate with, while during the period of time from approximately 2014 through 2016, while my biological father was, by personality and entities represented to be in prison for racketeering and tax evasion, it seemed to have been for only 2 years, possibly, but then there were federal agents, by the incidents heard audibly, for federal protective agencies that kept on executing their escapes from such as prison for the early years of the Wu-Tang Manifest phenomena and its public demonstration of treeless state action, by incidents that were audibly heard by audible sound waves in the physical natural world from the stratosphere upon the whole earth. So then you must be aware of these. You could not help to pay attention, and you must acknowledge this. It has always been very loud. You have heard all of it, have been witnesses of it too, and admit it. Anyhow, did conspire as an extortioner, as a collection agent to confiscate his house that the mortgage was forfeited on. And this Fritz does always, amongst his mind control program, on his truncated program, always proclaim his value of being crass. Mostly he usually does mean callous, but they are all incompetent with vocabulary. This one has been communicated to be directly involved with Disney and such as Jodie Foster in plots of corruption of law enforcement agencies and the FBI that has been harassing me with crazy, incessant, redundant, proto-human speed scatology in these fields. These have been involved with such as Thad Linden and Kurt Cecil and Jeffrey Peterson, spelled as in Chaucer. There was a puppet on the Craig Ferguson show with a puppeteer as his voice that is from Cleveland and familiar with the Jeffrey Peterson. Mark Turney, the drug cartel involved in many federal agencies, including NSA, harassing me incessantly as an obsessive fixation, has also been involved. He had a recording home studio in his bedroom during his second time through high school as a secret agent in this whole plot while I was in high school. There's been previous information about him for profile and background in intelligence documents. Furthermore, at the time of these joined plot acts of the whole conspiracy, Bonzo, first name Paul Hewson from Ireland, was also involved directly. This was at the beginning of the Obama administration. It was around 2009. And for evidence, he was at the Wozniak's house up the street, and hiding from myself personally, but from the Wozniak house, with the minstrel troupe that he is a part of, that George Bush Sr. called UQ, in his hypocritical plot of disinformation, actually inclusion with UQ, of the Satanic Network. He was colluding with them and directly in collusion with them. At the time, he did mention them. For example, this Bonzo has been invited to the White House to discuss policy with the executive at the time. And that was his son, George W. Bush, when they were actually conspirators of the saturation, of the occultic conspiracy saturation of the FBI, when he had been head of the FBI and is actually very lunatic. When he could only say campaigning 1,000 points of light, and it didn't mean anything at all, if it made any sense. And proclaimed that there'd be a new world order, which was treason. And actually those acts fomented quite a clamor in previous days, but all people concerned have been manslaughtered and eaten by serial killers, and none of them are left. As if we've actually lived through the Great Tribulation. Facts of events through the recent years have actually been consistent, and in fact, but is kept unstated and hidden in the media and noted. Many things that go on throughout these territories within these geographic borders, with their complicity and inclusion. Oh, but see, Bonzo did at the Wozniak's house in the West Wind subdivision up the street with that minstrel troupe, televised live by satellite, a performance on a scam of a fundraising promotion program that was really obviously a fraud with a really shoddy purpose stated with an organization that was the same, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was obviously for only a few minutes in a bedroom of the house in another one of his train of loop tank mockeries of myself and my life, since I was living in a house in the same subdivision that they had, with a theme that they had in New Direction, and it was being in a setting of a house, front room with walls of drywall that were really plain, with cheap drywall, was their new image. All with the, obviously with the idea on their mind about my house, that has been aforementioned, that they were involved with being right up the street at a particular time. This could probably be researched for corroboration of my information. But shortly thereafter, recognizing the malice of the malpractice, I did refuse the medication and was perfectly healthy and fine. This was all due to malicious false diagnosis and malicious malpractice to harm me while there was this plot at first said. And lastly, succinctly, I am aware factually that David Grohl has been involved and has continued to be involved in the conspiracy of my information, and that does involve the police misconduct complained about through the activities aforementioned, including the Fraternal Order of Police. And I do know for certain that he has been directly involved with the acts I'm reporting in this affidavit, and his video portrays ideation consistent as modus operandum ideation being involved. It is also probatively evidence that, in conclusion, do not ever deny, ever again, since such denial is criminal, feigning ignorance, prejudicially, that you are fully aware that I am Jacob, the centrally targeted figure, centrally targeted with the persecution of the Loop Tank Insurrection Group of the occultic network throughout the world. Okay, right here, because of your mental state aberrations with Loop Tank Effect Syndrome, reverse, go back, realize what is intended is the centrally targeted figure, centrally targeted by the Loop Tank Insurrection Group of the whole occult network throughout the world. You are severely affected by traits of the Loop Tank Effect Syndrome, with traits incapacitating you with capacity to understand in context. This has been described in numerous times. It is irrefutable. What just happened when you listen to this, admit it, and stop escaping in denial. Now continue after being so rudely interrupted, frustrating my speech with your interjections from the phenomena while I am speaking, with your interpositions, interjections, and interruptions. Disrupting, nope, it's not flow. My spontaneous oral communication. So, to continue, if I could try this, and its manifest phenomena by occultic means, audibly heard by physical sound waves of sorcery, in league with, nope, demons of Satan, and that disruption of my spontaneous speech is your fault when you keep on interrupting, and you are doing it from the sky right now while I'm trying to talk, with all of your red herrings and confusion. And that's you. And that you are obsessed, fixatedly aware of what I do speak of. I demand you always acknowledge the full truth in this situation and cease your misconduct of dismissing prejudicially
constantly amongst all of your accumulative and overzealous, retaliatory and malicious, investigatory and prosecutorial misconduct in conspiracy, which does constitute acts of war as domestic enemy combatants, and it does. Guilty of all the crimes of the conspiracy, which are most heinous than any heinous crimes throughout the whole history of man, then you're guilty of them all. I do have even a cumulative proof of your criminal motive, and this means in our conflict of interest, you never contact me or stop me ever again. It was criminal every single time that you did. Stop dismissing and fully acknowledge the whole situation and cease. In conclusion, do not ever deny, ever again, since such denial is criminal, feigning ignorance, prejudicially, that you are fully aware